Welcome to the Legislative Report with your State Representative, Ryan Mackenzie. I'm Anthony Tezak. The new two-year session has begun in the Pennsylvania Legislature, and today we'll be discussing what to expect on the agenda, as well as Representative Mackenzie's legislative priorities for the term. Representative Mackenzie, welcome to today's program. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So with a new session comes new committee assignments. Can you tell us a little bit about the committees that you've been assigned to?
Absolutely. So I've been assigned to 4 committees this session, 3 of which I had last session as well, so I'm very familiar with them, and the 4th is actually probably my area of expertise. So the 3 that I had last session were commerce, gaming oversight, and tourism and recreational development. 3 terrific committees that deal with all of the jobs and economic climate and activity here in Pennsylvania, so they're all very applicable to what the state is facing challenge-wise here. And then also the 4th one is labor and industry. That's my background. I worked as policy director at the State Department of Labor and Industry before being elected to the House, so those issues I'm very familiar with, and again, they deal with the most important issue we're facing, which is the jobs crisis here in Pennsylvania.
You know, another crisis that we have looming ahead of us is that Pennsylvania has an unfunded liability in the billions for the state pension systems. Is solving this problem in the short and long term something that is on the horizon for you in the House?
The pension crisis is probably our largest fiscal challenge here in the state, and so you're talking about a $41 billion unfunded liability, and that may not even be the full extent of it. Once you lower the discount rate on those obligations, it may be even a lot higher. So we have a real crisis when it comes to our pensions and the funding of that system. It was created through the legislature's own fault. Past legislatures made some irresponsible decisions by offering obligations and promising pension benefits that are greater than they could really handle. Then there was some unfunding that went on for a pretty extensive period of time, and also there are some external factors as well. The crises of the early 2000s, and then also here in 2008, 2009, 2010, all of those economics had an impact on the funding and the amount of revenue that's available for the pension obligations. So there is going to have to be some reforms made in that area. Specifically, people have been looking at reforming the benefits that are offered to new employees that are coming into the system. We're also going to have to look at other systems and changes that have been made in other states throughout the country. And so we have a promise that's in our state constitution that we follow through on the commitments that we've made to those pensions. But at the same time, we have to reform the system going forward so that it's really sustainable.
Going back to your background in jobs, we know that government does not create jobs, but it can create a good climate for jobs. What can be done by the House to create a good climate?
You're absolutely correct. Government does not create jobs, but we can create a positive climate for those jobs. So things that we're looking at this section are regulatory reform. We're also looking to do some workers' compensation reform. That's an area of great interest to me. It's a system that is misused oftentimes, and so we would like to reform that system. And then also there's things that we can do to really improve our workforce development efforts here in the state, streamlining the different programs that are out there, and then also creating some new ones that are really better suited to this economic situation that we're in. So we're looking at doing some actual concrete reforms and legislation on those fronts that'll hopefully make the climate here in Pennsylvania a lot better for job creators.
Now, last session was your first session, but you had a very successful one. You sponsored a pro-business bill that became law. Can you tell us a little bit about this law?
Yeah, so what it was is it was a reform to the Department of Agriculture's Bureau of Weights and Measures, and what they do there had really become a catch-all for all measuring, timing, weighting devices throughout the Commonwealth. And what we found was that simply it was rather ineffective and an overreach on government. And so what we were able to do, we were able to extend some of the intervals in which devices will be inspected just because there simply was a lack of problems that were occurring. And also we could privatize some of those responsibilities as well. So all in all, what we did, it's going to streamline government. It's going to take less regulatory authority or put less regulatory authority in place. But at the same time, it's still going to protect consumers. So the way that we do that is by allowing anytime there is a problem, consumers can still report it to the Department of Agriculture. And so that's a real positive measure. It's something that's been done in a lot of states. And so essentially, instead of having the department searching for a needle in the haystack, we're going to be self-reporting. Customers and clients are going to be self-reporting problems to the department. It's a much better way to do things, much more efficient way of governing, and real positive. Passed overwhelmingly both in the House and the Senate, bipartisan support across the board, so a real positive reform.
What other pieces of legislation are you looking at introducing this session?
Yeah, the other things that I'm working on in the short term certainly are helping volunteer fire companies. They're some of our first responders. They do a terrific job in our community, and we want to help them. And so we came across a problem in Berks County where a couple volunteer fire companies were merging, and they were all of a sudden hit with the realty transfer tax. I don't think that's fair. They obviously have tight budgets, and they're doing good work for our community, so we're going to hopefully be able to exempt them from that realty transfer tax. It's something that already that exemption exists for nonprofits, religious organizations, and other groups as well. So I think extending it to volunteer fire companies is the responsible thing to do. I've already generated a lot of good bipartisan support in the House after we sent around the co-sponsor memo. So that's something that we hopefully can get done in this session. Pretty early on. Also, on another front is child identity theft. It's an area of great concern for a lot of people. What happens is their child's identity and their social security number might be stolen, and they don't find out about it for many years because a child's obviously not incurring or issuing or requesting any new debt. So all of a sudden they might only find out about that when the child turns 17 or 18 years of age. And so trying to put in place or at least build some awareness around that issue to help stop that and prevent child from being victims.
It's going to be a busy year here in the House, and one of the more prominent issues coming up on the front is the budget. What's your philosophy on that?
Yeah, the budget is always our biggest piece of legislation that we tackle every year, and so I was very happy with the outcome that we had last year. It was passed on time, no new taxes, and also adequately funded education. So I think those were all some good parameters that should be adhered to this session, and hopefully we can do that.
Another big issue facing the state is transportation funding. What are your thoughts on how we solve that problem?
Yeah, and so we need to look at that in a responsible fashion as well. And obviously, we do need to put more dollars towards transportation funding. And so we're looking at the different sources of revenue for that. At the same time, we have to be conscious of consumers and taxpayers who are the ones that are going to be footing that bill. And also, we do need to look at the cost side of the transportation funding equation. I don't think enough scrutiny is put on that, and so really looking at how we can do that. A positive change that I've talked about in the past and I would like to see going forward is changing the definition of prevailing wage currently includes maintenance. And so in talking with PennDOT in my area, they say that because prevailing wage applies to maintenance on the same workers, the same crews are out there working on projects, they would continue to do that work, but instead of having the funding for 70 to 80 miles of road, that same amount of funding could go towards covering 110 miles of new maintenance and road work. So changing the definition for prevailing wage and excluding maintenance would be a real positive change. And so that's one concrete example of how you can look at the cost side of things and stretch those transportation dollars further.
Another issue on everyone's mind right now is privatization. We recently heard that we had the lottery privatized. What are your thoughts on that and the outcome of the deal that was made?
Sure. In general, I'm a supporter of privatizing government services, and so we just need to look at them carefully and with a little caution. And so when it comes to lottery privatization and liquor privatization, certainly we want to be concerned and scrutinize the revenues that are coming in from those services, and then also the jobs that are out there. But these things can be privatized if you answer some of these serious questions. And so certainly right now the one that we have been dealing with is the lottery privatization. I reached out to the governor's office. I received answers to those questions. The revenues would be greater than they are currently. And on the jobs front, they said that all employees from the lottery management system would be either maintained by the private sector employer or offered jobs elsewhere in state government as a natural attrition happens when people retire. So that answered my questions and satisfied my concerns. And so so, the governor has the responsibility to go through with that contract and the authority to do so. And I think, again, he's been responsive to the legislature, and it seems like he's answered the questions in a positive fashion. So, again, privatization is a good thing if it makes a lot of sense.
And you spoke briefly about the privatization of the liquor stores. Where do we stand on that?
Yeah, so we're going to be back at it this session looking at liquor privatization. The governor is on board with that, and so I think you see an alignment with the House, the Senate, and the governor's office on a sincere effort to privatize the liquor stores. So hopefully we'll see some action on that, and again, as long as it makes good sense for the constituents, then I think in general privatization is a good thing, and we can move forward.
And before we wrap up, any last comments that you'd like to make, while you have the time?
It's been a great honor serving the people of the 134th Legislative District. I'm sincerely appreciative of the opportunity to come back for another session. And again, you're going to see us focusing on improving the job climate in Pennsylvania, helping education, and also just tightening up government across the board and making sure that it's more efficient and effective with the tax dollars that we're offered.
Well, Representative Mackenzie, again, congratulations on the start of your second term, and I look forward to hearing from you more.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for today's program. If you need any assistance with any state matter, please contact Representative Mackenzie at his local office or through his website. That information will be shown in a moment. Thanks for watching, and join us next time for Representative Ryan Mackenzie's Legislative Report.